You ever throw a party knowing it's actually a funeral? Not for a person, but for a relationship? Because that's exactly what I did. A gender reveal party that wasn't about celebrating life, but about exposing a lie. And the best part? She never saw it coming. I knew my wife was cheating before she even suspected I had a clue. That's the thing about people who lie. They assume they're smarter than the ones they deceive. But I had one rule in life: never play games with someone who knows the rules better than you. So when I found out my wife was having an affair, I didn't confront her. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just smiled, nodded, and started planning. The first clue was her sudden excitement to have a baby. We'd been married for 4 years, and for most of it, she wasn't in any rush. But one day, out of nowhere, she was all about it. "I just feel like it's time," she said, her eyes practically glowing. "Like we're finally ready." I nodded along, pretending to be on the same page, while inside, something didn't sit right. Then there were the late nights working, the guarded phone, the way she started being extra affectionate, almost too affectionate. A guilty conscience does strange things to people. So, I did what any rational man would do. I let her dig her own grave. She got pregnant fast. Suspiciously fast. The kind of fast that made me wonder if I even had a role in it. And that's when I knew I had to confirm what I already suspected. So I played the doting husband. I held her hand at doctor's appointments, kissed her forehead, told her how excited I was to be a dad. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I had a different kind of appointment, one at a private clinic, where I arranged for a prenatal paternity test. She never even noticed the extra blood work. And then, the results came in. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the paper, feeling nothing. Not shock, not anger. Just the cold satisfaction of being right. Some men would have confronted their wife immediately. Screamed. Demanded answers. But I had a better idea. Why rush the reveal when I could make it unforgettable? That's when I decided to throw the biggest gender reveal party anyone had ever seen. "You deserve something special," I told her. "Let's make this a moment we'll never forget." And oh, I meant it. I rented out a beautiful venue, invited all our friends, family, her coworkers, everyone she cared about. She was ecstatic, kissing me like I was the best husband in the world, telling me how lucky she was. I just smiled. On the day of the party, everything was perfect. The decorations were elegant, the cake was enormous, the photographers were ready. She wore a flowing white dress, glowing with happiness, completely unaware of what was coming. "Are you ready?" I asked her as we stood in front of the crowd. She squeezed my hand. "I can't wait." Neither could I. A massive black balloon was set up in the center of the venue, filled with colored powder, blue for a boy, pink for a girl. Everyone counted down, cameras rolling, anticipation high. She beamed at me, thinking this was her moment. 3, 2, 1. I popped the balloon, but instead of blue or pink, a cloud of white exploded into the air. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Murmurs, whispers, laughter. At first, people thinking it was a mistake, some kind of joke. But then, the projector screen behind us flickered to life. And there it was. A scant copy of the paternity test, blown up for everyone to see. Probability of paternity, 0%. Silence. Dead. Silence. I turned to her, watching the color drain from her face. Her hands shook. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "W what?" she stammered, barely above a whisper. I took the mic, my voice steady. "Looks like we have a surprise twist," I said. "This isn't a gender reveal. It's a paternity reveal." Gasps. Someone in the back dropped their drink. Her mother looked like she was about to pass out. And my wife? She just stood there, frozen, as the weight of the moment crushed her. I handed her the mic. "Anything you want to say?" She didn't. Because what could she say? The crowd began to murmur louder, people piecing together what had just happened. The cheating, the lie, the deception laid bare in front of everyone. Some of her friends looked away, embarrassed for her. Others gawked, fascinated by the real-life soap opera unfolding before their eyes. And then, from the corner of the room, I saw him. Her lover. He wasn't supposed to be there. He probably came to watch from a distance, never expecting to be exposed. His face was pale, his body tense. I met his eyes and smirked. He knew I knew. And now, everyone else did too. My wife finally found her voice. We should talk about this privately," she whispered, reaching for my hand like that could fix anything. I pulled away. "Privately?" I repeated, tilting my head. "Oh, no, no, no. You made this public the moment you decided to lie to me, to our families, To everyone here. You don't get privacy anymore. She started to shake. I can explain. Can you? I cut her off, raising an eyebrow. Because I'd love to hear it. In fact, why don't you tell everyone? I mean, they're all here. Your parents. My parents. Your friends. Your colleagues. I think they deserve an explanation, don't you? She looked around, desperate for someone to save her, but there was no escape. No easy way out. Just the truth, laid out for everyone to see. I let the moment linger, savoring the sheer horror in her eyes. And then, I did the thing that sealed it all. I took off my wedding ring, placed it on the table in front of her, and stepped back. Congratulations, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're having a baby. Too bad it's not mine. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there in front of everyone, exposed, humiliated, and alone. And that was just the beginning. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you my life was damn near perfect. Not in some fairy tale, everything is magical way, but in the way that a man who worked hard and built a stable life could appreciate. I had a good job, a comfortable home, and a wife who, at least from the outside, seemed like she loved me. Our marriage wasn't the kind you see in movies. No dramatic declarations of love, no whirlwind romance. It was steady, built on years of familiarity, mutual respect, and what I thought was trust. We had our routines, little traditions that made life feel predictable in the best way. Saturday mornings, we'd sleep in, wrapped up in each other, before lazily making breakfast together. I'd brew the coffee while she danced around the kitchen, singing off-key to whatever pop song was stuck in her head that week. It was annoying in a way that I had convinced myself was endearing. I never told her to stop. Weeknights, we'd unwind on the couch, watching whatever series we had decided to binge. She loved crime dramas, always trying to guess the killer before the big reveal. I'd let her think she was right even when she wasn't, because it made her happy. And the little things, the texts during the day, the way she'd randomly reach for my hand when we were driving, the way she'd lean into me when we were out with friends like I was her anchor in a sea of conversation. Those were the things that made me think we were solid. I can't say I was a perfect husband. No one is. Maybe I worked a little too much. Maybe I didn't always notice when she got a haircut. Maybe I took for granted that she would always be there. But I was loyal. I was committed. I never once looked at another woman and thought, what if? Because I had already made my choice. And I thought she had made hers too. But looking back, there were cracks. Small, almost imperceptible at the time, but in hindsight, glaring. Like the way she started going to happy hours after work more often. It started as a rare thing. Then suddenly, it was every Thursday. Then Tuesday. Then sometimes a spontaneous Friday night, where she'd come home just tipsy enough to be affectionate, but never sloppy enough to let anything slip. Or the way her phone, once casually left on the coffee table or nightstand, became something she kept close. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then there were the moments, her turning it face down when I walked into the room, the way she'd angle her body away from me when texting, the sudden increase in work group chats that required her attention at all hours. I ignored it, not because I was naive, but because I trusted her. And when you trust someone, you don't jump to conclusions. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Then there was the shift in intimacy. At first, she was more affectionate than usual, almost as if she were trying to prove something, to make up for something. But then, slowly, the balance tipped. Excuses, stress from work, headaches, just tired. I chalked it up to life. People go through phases. Relationships have ebbs and flows. I wasn't worried. Not yet. The real shift came with the baby talk. We had always been someday people when it came to kids. We had talked about it, sure, but it was always a distant thing, maybe next year, after this big project at work, when we travel more. Then, suddenly, she was all in. It just feels like the right time, she said one night over dinner, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. I think we're ready. It caught me off guard. Not because I was against it, but because it was so sudden. I studied her, looking for the reason behind the change. Maybe it was because her friends were starting families. Maybe she just had some kind of epiphany. Or maybe, though I didn't let myself consider it for more than a fleeting second, there was another reason. I pushed the thought away. Because why would I doubt her? So I said yes. Because I loved her. Because I wanted a family with her. Because I thought this was the next step in the life we were building. And she was ecstatic. More affectionate than she had been in months. almost relieved. Now, I know why. When she got the positive test, she cried. She threw her arms around me, whispering, "We did it," as if this was some grand victory. I held her, smiling, believing I had just stepped into the next chapter of my life. And in a way, I had. Just not the chapter one thought. Because a few weeks later, that gnawing feeling in the back of my mind became too loud to ignore. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was creating problems where there weren't any. But paranoia doesn't come with timestamps. It doesn't leave lipstick stains on wine glasses that weren't mine. It doesn't explain why she suddenly had a password on her phone when she never cared before. And it sure as hell doesn't produce DNA results that tell you you're not the father of your wife's child. No, that was something else entirely. Something real. Something undeniable. And as I sat there, staring at that piece of paper, the world around me didn't collapse. It sharpened. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to make sure that when this story ended, I was the one who wrote the final chapter. You ever get that feeling that something is off? Not a flashing neon sign, not some dramatic revelation, just a shift, subtle but impossible to ignore? That was how it started for me. A whisper in the back of my mind, telling me that something wasn't right. It was a Tuesday night. Nothing special, just one of those ordinary evenings where routine played out like it always did. I came home from work, and she was already there, curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. That wasn't unusual. But the way she reacted when I walked in? That was. She didn't greet me right away. Normally, she'd at least look up, say something. Instead, there was this fraction of a second, so small it could have been missed, where she stiffened. Her fingers moved quickly, locking her phone, tucking it beside her. Then she looked up, all smiles, acting like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice a little too bright. "How was work?" I didn't answer right away. I was too busy looking at her. Because that hesitation? That was new. I sat down across from her, watching. Not interrogating, not accusing. Just watching. She kept talking, filling the space between us with casual conversation. Work was fine. Her day was fine. Everything was fine. But now that the whisper of suspicion had crept in, I started noticing the cracks. The way her eyes flicked to her phone every now and then, like she was waiting for something. The way she laughed a little too much at things that weren't funny. The way she was performing. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because suspicion isn't proof. And proof? That was what I needed. The first real test came later that night. We were in bed, lights off, but I wasn't asleep. She thought I was. I could tell by the way she moved, slow, careful, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. I kept my breathing steady, listening. The screen lit up. A faint glow in the dark. Then, the sound. A message. She exhaled, quiet, but not in the way someone does when they're relaxed. No, this was different. Like she was relieved. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see. Her body was angled away. The screen turned slightly so I couldn't catch what was on it. I waited. She typed. Deleted. Typed again. Then, after a few seconds, she put the phone back down. I closed my eyes completely, thinking. A message. Late at night. One she didn't want me to see. Could have been nothing. Could have been work. Could have been a friend. But I didn't believe in coincidences. The next day, I decided to test something. Over breakfast, I asked, "So, what time did you go to bed last night?" She didn't even blink. "Same as you," she said, sipping her coffee. Why? Liar. That was my confirmation. I didn't react. Didn't push. Because I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for patterns. And the patterns started forming fast. Suddenly, she was on her phone more, but being careful about it. She started getting dressed up for work, just a little more effort than before. Perfume on days when she didn't used to wear it. Then, another shift. She started working late. Not all the time. Just once or twice a week, at first. Just enough to make it seem believable. I played my role perfectly. Supportive. Trusting. The good husband. But every time she walked out that door with a vague excuse, I started piecing it together. And then came the moment that sealed it for me. One night, she told me she was meeting some coworkers for a last-minute team dinner. A casual, offhand comment, said too smoothly. "Where at?" I asked. She hesitated. Just a second. But a second was enough. That Italian place downtown. You know the one." Yeah, I knew the one. I also knew how easy it was to check. So, I waited. Gave it a couple of hours. Then, casually, I called her. She didn't pick up. 5 minutes later, she called back. "Hey, sorry. It was so loud in here. I didn't hear it ring. I listened carefully. Silence. No restaurant noise. No chatter. No background music. Just silence. I played along. No worries. Just wanted to see how it's going. Oh, it's great, she said. Too fast. Too rehearsed. We're just finishing up, probably heading home soon. Nice. Who all's there? Another hesitation. The usual team. Sarah, Matt, couple others. She was improvising. And she wasn't good at it. That was when I knew, without a doubt, that my wife was lying to me. I didn't know who. I didn't know how long. But I knew enough. And once you know, you can never unknow. So, I hung up, sat back in my chair, and started thinking. Not about confronting her. Not about arguing. No, I was thinking about something else entirely. How do you dismantle a liar's world without them even realizing it's happening? How do you make sure, when the truth finally comes out, it's not just a confession, it's a reckoning? I had my answer. And from that moment on, I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was the man planning her downfall. You ever watch someone lie to your face and pretend you don't see it just to see how far they'll go? I did, and let me tell you, it's fascinating when you stop reacting and start observing the patterns, the cracks, the little mistakes that build up over time like a house of cards, waiting to collapse. The night of that fake dinner, I didn't sleep, not because I was angry, not because I was heartbroken, but because my mind was too busy working, analyzing, turning over every little inconsistency, every shift in behavior, every moment where she thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was. She changed her phone password. I noticed that the next morning she used to have no problem unlocking it in front of me, sometimes even handing it to me to check something. Now suddenly it was always face down, always in her pocket, always guarded like a secret she didn't want slipping out. I tested it casually, asked, "Hey, can I borrow your phone? Mine's dead. Need to check something for work." Just a second. Her reaction was instant, a flicker of panic so fast most people wouldn't have caught it, but I did. She forced a laugh, all fake casual, like, "Oh, I'd let you, but I've got a bunch of work stuff open. Don't want you seeing all my boring emails, right? Because work emails are top secret now." I smiled, nodded, said no problem, but in my head I was already making my next move. That same day I checked our shared phone plan, something I hadn't done in months, because why would I? Trust wasn't something I ever questioned before, but now trust wasn't on the table anymore. And there it was, a number I didn't recognize, one that kept showing up over and over, late at night, during the day, sometimes just a couple of minutes, sometimes long stretches of an hour or more, always the same number. I didn't call it, not yet. I wasn't looking to scare her off, I was looking to build my case. So I watched and waited, paying attention to the little things, the way she'd suddenly get up and leave the room to take a call, the way she'd be all smiles texting, but the moment I walked in she'd lock her screen and shove her phone away, the way she suddenly had more work events than ever before. And then came the big one, the moment I knew I wasn't just dealing with suspicion anymore, I was dealing with cold hard proof. She told me she was going to a yoga class, something new she'd picked up recently for stress. I played dumb, said, "That's great, glad you're taking time for yourself." She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and left. I waited 10 minutes, then checked her location. We had a tracker on our phones, nothing sneaky, just something we'd always had for convenience, but now it had a different purpose. And she wasn't at yoga. She was across town in a residential area, a place I didn't recognize, nowhere near the studio. She said she was going to, just sitting there parked for over an hour. When she came home later that night, all glowing and relaxed like she'd just had the best workout of her life, I asked her how yoga was. She smiled, said, "Amazing, such a good class." I nodded, took a sip of my drink, and asked casually, "Oh yeah, what poses did you do?" Silence just for a beat too long, then a forced laugh. "Oh, you know, the usual downward dog, warrior pose, all that stuff." I just smiled, nodded again, said, "Sounds great, glad you're enjoying it." Because now I knew. She wasn't at yoga, she wasn't working late, she wasn't just busy or stressed or distracted, she was lying to my face and thinking I was too stupid to see it. And that was the moment I stopped being a husband and started being a detective. I checked her car GPS logs, saw repeated trips to the same location, always when I wasn't home, always during those work nights and yoga classes. I started watching her credit card activity, saw charges at hotels, restaurants, places we'd never been together, places she didn't mention. I cloned her phone. Yes, it was drastic, but I wasn't playing fair anymore. And that's when I found everything. The messages, the calls, the secret photos exchanged between her and the mystery number. It wasn't just some random guy from work. This was something deeper, something planned, something that had been going on for a while, and she thought she was getting away with it. She thought she was smarter than me. She thought I was just the oblivious husband, too busy trusting her to see what was right in front of me. She was wrong. And now I had everything I needed to destroy her world without her even realizing the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. So I did what any man in my position would do. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and started planning her reckoning. The truth wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a sledgehammer breaking through every illusion I had left. The moment I saw the proof, it wasn't shock that hit me. It wasn't even anger. It was something colder, something sharper. The kind of clarity that comes when you stop hoping, stop making excuses, and finally see things for what they are. It was late, past midnight, and she was asleep beside me, breathing evenly, completely unaware that her perfect little lie had already shattered. I had cloned her phone earlier that day, set up a mirror feed so that every message she sent, every call she made, every photo she received, it all came straight to me. And now, lying in the dark, I watched it unfold in real time. A message. Him. Wish I could have stayed longer today. You're impossible to resist. Her. I know. I barely made it home without wanting to turn around and see you again. I hate leaving you. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening, my breathing slowing. No hesitation. No guilt in her words. She wasn't being manipulated. She wasn't second-guessing. She was all in. Another message. Him. You sure he doesn't suspect anything? Her, please. He's clueless. He thinks I was at yoga today. I could probably tell him I was abducted by aliens, and he'd believe it. I smiled. A slow, humorless smile. Clueless. That was what she thought of me. A fool. A blind, trusting idiot who never saw what was right in front of him. I kept scrolling. Messages stretching back months. Plans made. Lies coordinated. Jokes at my expense. The way they talked about me like I was just some background character in their little love story. And then the photos. Hotel rooms. Dinners. Her in lingerie I'd never seen before, posing for him, sending him pieces of herself that were never meant for me. If she had been awake in that moment, she would have been terrified. Not because I would hurt her. I'm not that kind of man. But because I wasn't yelling, I wasn't throwing things, I wasn't shaking her awake and demanding answers. I was quiet, calm, and I was already deciding exactly how I was going to tear her life apart. I got up slowly, careful not to wake her, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and sat at the table, staring at my phone, rereading the messages. There was something liberating about knowing. No more doubt. No more wondering. Just facts. And with facts, you can build a plan. I wanted to humiliate her. That much was certain. But humiliation wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling, the gut punch of betrayal, the slow realization that everything she thought was safe was already crumbling beneath her feet. I opened my laptop and started working, downloading messages, saving photos, capturing every detail. I wasn't going to confront her yet. No, that would be too easy, too quick. I wanted her to think she was still winning. I wanted her to keep lying to my face, to keep sneaking around, to keep believing I was the clueless idiot she thought I was. Because the longer she believed that, the harder she was going to fall when the truth finally crashed down on her. And oh, it was going to crash down in the most spectacular way possible. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about precision, about understanding exactly where to strike, so that when the moment comes it's not just a wound, it's a collapse, a carefully orchestrated unraveling of everything she thought was secure. And the best revenge is the kind that doesn't just end things, but ensures she lives in the wreckage long after I walk away. So I sat at that kitchen table with the truth in my hands, and I thought, where does she think she's untouchable? Where does she feel safest? What does she value most? Because taking away what someone loves isn't as simple as making them suffer. It's about making them watch everything they built turn to dust and know they did it to themselves. And then I saw it so clearly, it was almost laughable. Her reputation, that was her weak spot. She had spent years crafting this perfect image of herself, the devoted wife, the future mother, the woman who had it all, who was admired, who was envied. And that was what I was going to take from her, not in some loud, messy, public screaming match, not in a way she could dismiss as just another bitter husband lashing out. No, I was going to make her destroy herself one small choice at a time. I was going to let her dig the hole, and then just help her fall into it. First, I needed more evidence, not just texts, not just photos, but real, undeniable proof. And for that, I had to make sure she didn't suspect a thing. So I played my part perfectly. I was the same husband. I had always been affectionate, but not clingy, interested, but not suspicious, supportive, trusting. I even started asking about her yoga classes, encouraging her to take time for herself, letting her believe I was oblivious while she walked right into the trap I was setting. Then I started laying the groundwork. She was already lying about her whereabouts. All I had to do was nudge things in the right direction, subtly planting seeds, making sure she thought she was still in control. I arranged for us to attend a charity event, something high-profile, something where she would want to look good in front of all the right people. And then I made sure that at the exact same time her lover was expecting her somewhere else, a hotel reservation under her name, a confirmation email sent to her work address, which I knew she always checked on her phone during the event. And just like that, she had a choice. Either she bails on the event, humiliating herself in front of colleagues and friends, or she stands next to me smiling, playing the perfect wife, knowing she just left her little affair partner waiting alone in a hotel room. Either way, she loses, and the best part is I don't even have to say a word. But that was just the beginning. The real masterpiece was the gender reveal party. She had always wanted something grand, something unforgettable, a moment where she would be the center of attention, surrounded by family and friends, basking in the glow of this perfect life she thought she was living. So I gave her exactly what she wanted, only twisted into something else entirely. I went all out, rented a venue, hired photographers, planned the event down to the smallest detail, every little touch designed to make it seem like I was the devoted husband overjoyed at becoming a father. I let her feel safe, let her feel like she had won, like she had fooled me completely. And then at the peak of the event, in front of everyone, I was going to expose her not just as a cheater, but as a liar, as a fraud, as a woman who had built her entire identity on a lie that was about to be ripped away in front of all the people she wanted to impress. But I wasn't just going to show them the truth, I was going to make her show them herself, because when the time came, when the moment arrived where the big reveal was supposed to happen, instead of the blue or pink explosion she was expecting, I was going to drop something else entirely, a paternity test, a live screen projection of her texts, a revelation so undeniable, so inescapable, that she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it. Because it wouldn't be me telling the world who she was, it would be her own actions exposing her. And that is a humiliation that lasts forever. And after that, after the silence, the whispers, the gasps, after she realizes in real time that her world has just imploded, I won't yell, I won't fight, I won't stay for her excuses, I will simply walk away, leaving her standing there in the wreckage of her perfect little fantasy, knowing that she did this to herself, that she played her game and lost completely. The best traps are the ones where the prey walks in willingly, believing they are safe, believing they have everything under control. That's exactly what I gave her, the illusion of security, the comfort of thinking she had fooled me completely. Because the deeper she sank into that false confidence, the harder the fall was going to be when I finally pulled the ground out from under her feet. And the best part was that she helped me do it every step of the way. She was glowing the morning of the party, completely unawa. Read that she was walking into her own funeral, humming to herself as she got ready, choosing the perfect dress, making sure every little detail was right, because to her this was the moment she had dreamed of, the grand event where she would be celebrated, admired, showered with attention and love. She thought she was on top of the world. She had no idea she was already plummeting toward the bottom. I played my part perfectly. I smiled, kissed her, told her she looked beautiful, held her hand as we walked into the venue, surrounded by friends, family, colleagues, all the people she wanted to impress, the people whose admiration she thrived on. She was soaking it and basking in the attention while I stood beside her quietly, knowing that in just a few moments all of it was going to turn to dust. Everything was set, the decorations perfect, the photographers ready, the guests eagerly waiting for the big reveal, and she was standing there at the center of it all, blissfully unaware that she was the only one who didn't know what was about to happen. She thought she was about to announce the future. I was about to erase the past. The countdown started, the massive black balloon in the center of the venue ready to burst, with color blue for a boy, pink for a girl, except that wasn't what was inside. I had something else planned, something better, something that would make sure there was no escape, no way for her to spin the story, no way to control the damage, because this wasn't about telling the world if we were having a son or a daughter. This was about revealing the truth. 3, 2, 1. I popped the balloon, and instead of a bright, joyful explosion of color, a thick cloud of white filled the air. Confusion rippled through the room, murmurs, laughter, people thinking it was some kind of mistake, and then the screen behind us flickered to life. And there it was. A scanned copy of the paternity test blown up for everyone to see. Probability of paternity 0%. Silence, dead, heavy, suffocating silence. Her laughter died in her throat, her face draining of all color as she stared at the screen like she couldn't believe what she was seeing, like if she looked away, maybe it would disappear, but it didn't. The truth was staring back at her, undeniable, inescapable. I turned to her, my voice steady, calm, cutting through the silence like a knife. Looks like we have a surprise twist, I said. This isn't a gender reveal, it's a paternity reveal. The crowd was frozen. Someone in the back dropped their drink. Her mother covered her mouth in horror. Her friends exchanged stunned glances. No one knew what to say. No one knew how to react. And she just stood there, her hands shaking, her body locked in place as the weight of it all crashed down on her. She looked at me, desperate, pleading, as if there was still a way out, as if she could still find a way to talk her way through it. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Tried again. Still nothing. Because what could she say? What lie could possibly fix this? What excuse could erase what everyone had just seen? I handed her the mic. Anything you want to say? She didn't, because there was nothing left to say. I let the moment linger, let her feel the weight of it, let her drown in the reality of what she had done. And then I did the one thing that sealed it all. I took off my wedding ring, placed it on the table in front of her, and stepped back. "Congratulations," I said. "You're having a baby. Too bad it's not mine." Then without another word I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in front of everyone, completely exposed, humiliated, and alone. And that was just the beginning. She didn't move at first, just stood there frozen, the mic still clutched in her trembling hand, as if she thought holding on to it would somehow anchor her in reality. But reality had already shattered around her. The silence in the room was suffocating, the weight of 100 stares pressing down on her, some filled with shock, some with pity, and others with quiet satisfaction, watching the golden girl fall from grace in real time. Her lips parted, no sound came out. She blinked rapidly, looking at me, looking at the screen, looking around the room, as if searching for an escape route. But there wasn't one. There was no door she could run through, no lie she could spin, no soft landing waiting for her. She was trapped, standing in the wreckage of her own making, and I just stood there watching, letting her drown in it, letting her feel every single ounce of the helplessness she had made me feel. Then finally a sound, a strangled, desperate attempt at control. "Babe," she said, stepping forward, her voice cracking. "Babe, please, we need to talk. We can fix this." Her hand reached for mine, and I took a step back, not out of anger, not out of disgust, but because this moment was hers to sit in. I wasn't going to pull her out of it. I wasn't going to save her from the consequences of her own choices. "Fix this," I repeated, tilting my head like I was considering it, like it was even a possibility. "Fix what exactly?" "The fact that you lied, the fact that you let me believe I was about to become a father when you knew the whole time, the fact that you sat across from me at dinner, at breakfast, in bed, and looked me in the eye like I was the only one." Her breath hitched, her eyes darted around the room, the pressure of the audience finally settling, and she tried to compose herself, forcing a smile that was barely holding together. "Let's just go home and talk about this, okay? This isn't the place." I let out a small laugh, not cruel, not mocking, just amused at the sheer audacity of it all. "Home?" I echoed, shaking my head. "No, home was for people who had something worth saving. Home was for families, for trust, for love. Whatever we had that qualified as home had burned to the ground the moment she let another man into her life, and let me believe I was enough." She tried again, voice rising, slightly panicked. "Now this isn't fair. You ambushed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. This isn't how we handle things. You should have come to me privately. We could have worked this out." "Work this out," I repeated slowly, as if testing the words on my tongue. "Worked what out exactly? The part where you betray me, or the part where I'm supposed to pretend it never happened and continue playing house with you while you sneak off to whatever hotel room you think I don't know about?" The crowd murmured, shifting, the weight of public exposure pressing down on her more with every passing second. She turned to her mother, eyes pleading, but the older woman shook her head, stepping back, ashamed, disgusted, unable to look at her. Her friends, some whispering, some turning away, not wanting to be part of the disaster unfolding before them. Tears welled up in her eyes, her breathing uneven. "This isn't me," she whispered, shaking her head frantically. "This isn't who I am. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen. I just got lost in it. I was confused, but I love you. I do." I held her gaze steady, unwavering. "Love," I said the word slowly, carefully, as if testing the weight of it between us. "You love me, and yet here we are." I gestured to the screen, to the evidence, to the damning reality she couldn't escape from. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have put me here. If you loved me, you wouldn't have made me think I was about to be a father while laughing about how clueless I was behind my back. If you loved me, you wouldn't have thrown away everything we built for something that clearly never meant enough for you to even be honest about." She broke, then, the tears spilling freely, hands clutching at the dress she had so carefully picked out for what she thought would be her perfect day. And now it was ruined by her own choices, ruined by the one lie she thought she could control. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking, "I don't want to lose you. Please, let's just go somewhere, anywhere, just us talk, just you and me." There it was, the desperation, the moment she realized she had lost control, that she wasn't the one pulling the strings anymore, that I was the one who had decided how the story ended. I stepped forward, leaned in just close enough that only she could hear my next words. "This isn't about what you want, not anymore. You lost that privilege the moment you made me the fool in my own life." Then I pulled back, turned away, and without looking back, I walked out, leaving her standing there, surrounded by everything she had worked so hard to build, and watching as it all crumbled around her. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break trust, it breaks the illusion a person builds around themselves, and once that illusion shatters, there's no putting it back together no matter how hard they try. She learned that quickly in the days that followed the party when the dust settled and she realized there was no escape, no way to control the damage, no way to pretend that what happened hadn't happened, because the truth was out and it spread like wildfire. Her friends abandoned her one by one, some because they were disgusted, some because they didn't want to be associated with the wreckage of her reputation. The golden girl turned fraud, the devoted wife turned liar, the woman who had it all and threw it away for what? A cheap thrill, a temporary escape. Whatever justification she had whispered to herself in the dark wasn't enough to stop reality from swallowing her whole. Her family was worse. Her mother's disappointment was brutal, silent, heavy, a weight that crushed her more than any screaming match ever could. Her father barely spoke to her, wouldn't even look her in the eye at family gatherings, because how do you face your daughter when she's been exposed as a fraud in front of everyone? You raised her to be better, and now she was just another scandal, just another whispered conversation behind closed doors. Her job suffered too, not because I directly interfered, but because people talk, and when you're the woman who humiliated herself in front of an entire room of professionals, it doesn't take long for that stain to spread. Whispers in the office, awkward silences at meeting. NGS colleagues who used to respect her now keeping their distance. And the worst part was she knew she had done it to herself. There was no villain to blame, no enemy to fight, just her own reflection and the choices that led her here. And me, I didn't disappear, I didn't run, I didn't hide, I thrived while she withered. I moved on with grace, with strength, with quiet satisfaction, because I hadn't just exposed her, I had freed myself from the lie I had been living. And when people looked at me, they didn't see a broken man, they saw someone who had taken back control of his life and left the destruction behind without a second thought. She reached out, of course, they always do. First, it was messages, long paragraphs of regret, of apologies, of desperation, then calls that I let go to voicemail, then attempts to see me in person, chance encounters that were never really chance at all. She wanted closure, she wanted forgiveness, she wanted some kind of reassurance that she wasn't as ruined as she felt. But I gave her nothing, because she had taken everything that mattered and crushed it beneath her selfishness, and now she had to live in that emptiness alone. The last time I saw her was months later. She looked different, not physically, but in the way she carried herself. The confidence was gone, the arrogance stripped away, replaced with something hollow, something broken. She tried to smile, tried to make small talk, but I could see the pain behind her eyes, the regret, the weight of knowing that she had lost everything and I had lost nothing. I let her talk, let her fumble through whatever speech she had rehearsed about how she had changed, about how she had learned her lesson, about how she missed me and wished things had been different. And when she was done, I just looked at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us before I finally spoke. You made your choice, I made mine, we live with the consequences. And then I walked away again, just like before, only this time, there was no audience, no crowd, no spectacle, just two people standing in the aftermath of a war. Only one of them had survived, and as I left her there standing alone with nothing but her own regrets, I knew without a doubt that I had won. Funny how life works out, isn't it? One minute you're the devoted husband, the man who trusts the woman he loves completely, and the next you're standing at the center of a storm you never saw coming, except maybe you did. Maybe deep down you always knew the signs were there, the lies were there, the cracks were forming, but love has a way of blinding you, making you see what you want to see until reality forces you to open your eyes, and once you do, there's no going back, no pretending, no fixing, only moving forward and leaving the past exactly where it belongs, in the rubble of what used to be. She still tries to reach me, sometimes not as often as before, but every now and then a message will come through, a quiet, desperate attempt to rewrite history, to soften the blow of what happened. But I don't answer, because there's nothing left to say. She had her chance, she made her choice, and now she has to live with it, without me, without the life she thought she had under control, without the safety net she assumed would always be there. And me, I'm not just fine, I'm better, I'm stronger. I walked away with my dignity, my integrity, my future intact, while she's stuck in the ruins trying to convince herself she's still the same person she was before, but she's not, because once you've been exposed for who you really are, there's no erasing it, no undoing it, no going back to the carefully curated image of the perfect wife, the perfect woman. The truth will always be there, lurking beneath the surface, reminding her that she isn't who she pretended to be. Some people have asked me if I ever regretted, if I ever wish I had handled things differently, if I wish I had just confronted her quietly, kept it between us, spared her the public humiliation, and maybe once a long time ago, I would have said yes. But not now, not after everything, not after seeing what kind of person she really was, because someone who could do what she did, who could lie and manipulate and betray so easily, doesn't deserve silence, doesn't deserve the luxury of slipping away unnoticed. She deserved exactly what she got. And maybe that makes me cold, maybe it makes me ruthless, but I don't lose sleep over it. And if you were in my place, if you had been the one who was lied to, betrayed, made into a fool in front of everyone you trusted, would you have done it any differently? Would you have given her a chance to escape the consequences of her own actions? Or would you have done exactly what I did and made sure she never forgot the day she lost everything?